Hare Krishna.
We
We're reading.
from Canto 4, Chapter 16, Text 17.
Got our backs against the wall.
Off the wall.
Brick in the wall.
Already have a wall.
Wonder wall. Okay.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 17. The king will respect all women as if they were his own mother, and he will treat his own wife as the other half of his body. He will be just like an affectionate father to his citizens, and he will treat himself as the most obedient servant of the devotees, who always preach the glories of the Lord. Purport. A learned man treats all women except his wife as his mother, looks on others' property as garbage in the street, and treats others as he would treat his own self. These are the symptoms of a learned person as described by Chanakya Pandit. This should be the standard for education. Education does not mean having academic degrees only. One should execute what he has learned in his personal life. These learned characteristics were verily manifest in the life of King Prithu. Although he was the king, he treated himself as a servant of the Lord's devotees. According to Vedic etiquette, if a devotee came to a king's palace, the king would immediately offer his own seat to him. The word Brahma Vadinam is very significant. Brahma Vadi refers to the devotees of the Lord. Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan are different terms for the Supreme Brahman, and the Supreme Brahman is Lord Krishna. This is accepted in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 12, by Arjuna. Param Brahma Param Dham. Thus the word Brahma Vadinam refers to the devotees of the Lord. The state should always serve the devotees of the Lord, and the ideal state should conduct itself according to the instructions of the devotee. Because King Prithu followed this principle, he is highly praised. Well, it's not really practiced in most countries, the majority of countries, is it? The state revering or respecting devotees of the Lord, any form of the Lord. I don't speak Krishna, but that's interesting. Although, to be fair, I mean, even though India is becoming very westernized, unfortunately, due to social media and consumerism, there is still a level of for the most part, some level of respect by most. Well, people may not follow, may not want to listen, but there's a holy person, there's a sadhu, there's a this. You kind of see that even at the very least they kind of nod their head. There's an acknowledgement of, okay, I accept something of you, your stature or whatever, which is nice. Some culture is left there, but apart from that, definitely the state is not looking to serve devotees.
Yeah, what to speak of conduct itself according to the instructions of the devotees.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Sorry, were you finished?
Yeah, for now.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking, why is that King Prithu conducts himself in such an august manner, or such a integral manner. It's very instructive for us, just the way how he treats ladies, how he treats his wife. He acts like a father to the citizens, and he treats himself as a servant of the devotees. These all four of these qualities that are mentioned are like high levels of good character. And it's quite rare to find that in people, what to speak of even amongst devotees. And I was just thinking that, unfortunately, in so many ways, our organization, institution, community, society, whatever you want to call it, has not done the best for itself in creating an atmosphere of high level of integrity. So therefore, we might instruct something, but or we might suggest something, but what will happen is people then look at you. They look in your life. They want to see what you do and how you do it, and how does your society do it. And the thing is, especially in the modern day, everybody can find out anything and everything about you just by the click of a button. It used to be easier to hide things, if you wanted to. These days, there's no hiding anything, which in one sense is good because it forces people to face facts and be honest more. But so it's unfortunate because Srila Prabhupada actually really did want that. He wanted the devotees of ISKCON to be of such a high caliber that they were able to guide governments, that they were able to guide leaders, they were able to inspire such a high level of integrity and trust that high-profile people would come. And he said like this, that he wanted, that he could see that government officials would come and ask us, what should we do in this situation? That's really that's a high bar that Srila Prabhupada said. So anyway, just a thought. And my wife informed me that in one of our readings when we were in a park and I was sitting in that swing, that somehow hammock thing, that somehow my mic must have been covered and it was a bit muted. So I would like to apologize for, trying to be in an enjoying condition by sitting in a hammock and swinging around and acting like a monkey or a clown. But in the course, it impaired your ability to actually hear the Bhagavatam, so I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Should be.
And I am. So there you go. Okay, so text 18. The king will consider all embodied living entities as dear as his own self, and he will always be increasing the pleasures of his friends. He will intimately associate with liberated persons, and he will be a chastising hand to all impious persons. So that's another 4 items. So we've got the way he conducts himself, is sort of a character, then how he'll treat all living entities, how he's going to increase pleasure with his friends. Like friends means let's have fun. So that, his life isn't devoid of fun. He'll intimately associate with liberated persons means intimately. Usually that word is used connecting, man and woman. But intimately, how do you intimately connect with a sadhu? Means you inquire. You deeply inquire. You deeply hear. That's the intimacy. And that he'll be chastising hand to all impious persons. Which sounds interesting because it says he'll consider all embodied living entities as dear as his own self. Well, that will include criminals. But criminals need to or will get dealt with by him, in a chastising way. So let's read the purport. The word Dehinam refers to those who are embodied. The living entities are embodied in different forms, which number 8,400,000 species. All of these were treated by the king in the same way he would treat himself. That's a high level of respect. In this age, however, so-called kings and presidents do not treat all other living entities as their own self. Most of them are meat eaters. And even though they may not be meat eaters and may pose themselves to be very religious and pious, they still allow cow slaughter within their state. Such sinful heads of state cannot actually be popular at any time. Another significant word in this verse is mukta sangha prasanga, which indicates that the king was always associating with liberated persons. Sometimes I think, God, Prabhupada, I wish you'd given us more, elaborate more, tell us more, share more about all the different, each one of those things, So anyway, I guess that's, Prabhupada had to choose his words wisely and keep moving through the books. And he was also depending on the commentaries of the previous acharyas, so like that.
Text 19. This king is the master of the three worlds, and he is directly empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is without change, and he is an incarnation of the Supreme, known as a Shakti Avatar. Being a liberated soul and completely learned, he sees all material varieties as meaningless, because the basic principle is nescience. Purport. The reciter of these prayers are describing the transcendental qualities of Prithu Maharaj. These qualities are summarized in the words Shakshat Bhagavan. This indicates that Maharaj Prithu is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead and therefore possesses unlimited good qualities. Being an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Prithu could not be equaled in his excellent qualities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is fully equipped with 6 kinds of opulences, and King Prithu was also empowered in such a way that he could display these 6 opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in full. At that point in the verse, being a liberated soul and completely learned, he sees all material varieties as meaningless, because their basic principle is nescience.
What does that mean to you?
Well, it means that he isn't swayed by all that glitters in this world. There's so many things. It can be from big things, like some people get enamored by fancy cars and clothes and labels on the clothes and blah blah blah. But even small things, like now the sky is nice and blue and we've got like this tree outside. I think it's a cherry blossom, but it looks really nice. Life it's cool. It's okay. It's nice. It's okay. That's how I take it, that he's dearer, he's fixed. It's like he's liberated, so he's learned, and he doesn't get swayed by these things. Even a cherry blossom tree could keep you attached to this material world, even though you might live, I don't know, like in a house with 20 people.
In a house with what? 20
people, I'm saying you've got no space of your own. I don't live in a house with 20 people, but I'm just saying. I'm saying you may not have anything, you may be suffering, but my point is you might see a cherry blossom tree and get, it's all life's all right. I'm saying in the material world, everything's it's geared towards capturing you. Everything. Even this wall. It was a nice wall. I got a nice wall, Alright, cool. I'm happy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Being a liberated soul, completely learned, sees all material varieties as meaningless because their basic principle is nescience. There's so much in there. Means he's liberated, which means he's beyond the material platform. He's not seeing the spirit. He's Brahman, on the level of Brahman. He's seeing things as spiritual. He's completely learned, so he's also knowledgeable. And he sees all material varieties. That means, like you said, all the different varieties of material aspects, happy, sad, sun, rain, as meaningless. Now that's really interesting. Meaningless. They don't have any meaning. Yeah, that's quite a deep thing to try to grasp exactly what that means. But they're meaningless because their basic principle is nescience, which is ignorance. nescience.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think we have to be careful that because all the previous things that have been explained or glorified of him by the bards doesn't necessarily show that he's just oblivious. He's having certain relationships with his wife, certain relationships with, whatever it is, other ladies, the subjects and of the kingdom. He's having fun with his friends. So, we have to make sure that we see things in context. Otherwise, I feel like this could be taken and it just means that he just sees everything as one and he is not interested in any of it because it's all ignorance. And I don't really think that's actually what it means. I think that he's not, you said it really nicely, he's not allured, he's not attracted, he's not enamored, but it doesn't mean he's not interacting. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that he's not interacting and going through the motions. Just internally he understands that the material energy is generally derived from ignorance, and it's an entrapment, but still I'm here and I have to function in a certain way. Anyway, let's see. What are we doing for time? Ooh. So there's quite a lengthy, long paragraph here. The word kutastha, meaning without change, is also very significant. There are two kinds of living entities, nitya mukta and nitya baddha. A nitya mukta never forgets his position as the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who does not forget this position and knows that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord is nitya mukta. Such a nitya mukta living entity represents the super soul as his expansion. Means basically nitya mukta becomes guru. As stated in the Vedas, nityo nityanam, thus the nitya mukta living entity knows that he is an expansion of the Supreme Nitya, or the Eternal Supreme Personality of Godhead. Being in such a position, he sees the material world with a different vision. Okay, perfect. The living entity who is nitya baddha, or eternally conditioned, sees the material varieties as being actually different from one another. In this connection, we should remember that the embodiment of the conditioned soul is considered to be like a dress. One may dress in different ways, but a really learned man does not take dresses into consideration. Wow, there is a lot here in this purport. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 5.18, Vidyavanaya sampani brahmani gavi hastani shuni chaiva swapake cha pandita samadarbhishanaha. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog-eater, outcast. Thus, a learned man does not look upon the dresses that externally cover the living entity, but sees the pure soul within the varieties of dress, and knows very well that the varieties of dress are the creation of nescience, of vidya rachitam. Being Shakti-Avesh avatar, empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prithu Maharaj did not change his spiritual position, and consequently there was no possibility of his viewing the material world as reality. So much in there. Briefly, I think nitya baddha and nitya mukta. Some places called nitya siddha. But nitya mukta and nitya baddha, sometimes it is not, I'm not saying it's explained in the Shastra, but sometimes devotees explain these as, and Prabhupada also alludes to it, yes, that nitya mukta means one who never comes to the material world, and nitya baddha means one who's in the material world, like us, but is basically trapped here. And because it's nitya, which means eternal, it means you're either eternally liberated or you're eternally conditioned. But that just doesn't make sense. Although, when you look at the etymology, I guess, of the words, it seems to imply that. But I think this purport is brilliant because Srila Prabhupada very clearly states what it actually means. Anitya mukta is someone who is conditioned, not conditioned, but who is not conditioned, and therefore sees with divine vision and understands the eternality of the world and its connection with Krishna. Anitya Bhada, that person's perspective is bereft of that divine vision, and therefore they're conditioned to see the world as, quote unquote, it appears to the naked eye, and therefore gets entangled. So Anitya Mukta is just someone who's not entangled in the material world because they have a different vision and perspective on the situation. And there's lots of other really powerful points that are brought up here, but it's wonderful to read Srila Prabhupada's books, don't you think?
Yeah.
But she's thinking it's wonderful to read the books, but not necessarily to listen to you, Johnny Toy, right?
And you read my paragraph.
How? There wasn't another
Here it is,
paragraph.
it's right there.
What is it?
There. That's,
Well, in my book,
I know.
in mine, it
I
doesn't
know.
show that.
Look, I saw. I just want to say it anyway.
that is something for you to look at. It's me. Especially even when you knew it. It'd be different if you didn't know it.
Alright, thanks everybody.
Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.